Welcome back to another session of Marketing Cafe Live. I'm Michael K. Reynolds. So glad that you have joined us today for another session. We got really an excellent topic that we're going to go into, which is promotional items. And these are one of my favorite things in marketing. It's something that a lot of people don't use strategically, I think, as well as they can. Well, I'm Michael K. Reynolds. I'm the owner for a very long time of Global Studio, and you can reach me at globalstudio.com. And this is the Marketing Cafe. At the Marketing Cafe, we've got a great club, marketingcafe.club. At the end of these sessions, if you catch us in the middle or towards the end and you're saying, hey, I wanted to catch the whole session, the good news is we have the Marketing Cafe Academy. In the Marketing Cafe Academy, all of these Marketing Cafe live sessions are there for you to access 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we've had some great ones that we have in there. So I encourage you to get in there. It's totally free. Go to marketingcafe.club and you can sign up for that. Well, let's get on with our title today. It's making your business unforgettable with promotional items. And I have an excellent guest today. His name is Peter Fishburn. He's been doing this for a very, very long time. He's put logos on just about everything. Let's meet our guest, Peter Fishburn. Peter, what was it that got you involved in promotional items in the first place?
Well, I have a background in marketing and working with businesses in that area. And there was a transition in my life way back in the early 90s. And it was proposed for me to do this. And I began tinkering with it. And I just kept with it. It began to be fun to do.
Well, now, examples of promotional items, there's so many different things, but this is embroidered shirts and logoed hats and all kinds of things. We're actually going to get into the specifics of what exactly a promotional item is. But what are some of maybe the strangest things that you've done over the course of 25 years, put logos on things that maybe people wouldn't have expected?
Well, I was in a trade show. I mean, I wasn't in the trade show. A company had asked me to participate in a trade show, and we were going to do the whole trade show under black lights. So everything had to glow. The shirts had to glow, the necklaces and things that the people were wearing to go from booth to booth, because there was a training episode as well, and little medallions that they had to be applied, and they wanted them to glow differently. So that was really an interesting experience to make sure that happened. And it was under a time pressure too. We had to do it all done in like 3 weeks.
I think that sounds like a lot of fun to do it all under black light. That must have been quite a scene to come in and see. All right, so we're going to get into our content. Basically, what we want to help people know is, I think a lot of people are familiar with, oh yeah, I'm going to put a logo on a shirt and that kind of thing. But there's a much broader sophistication to the art, to the science of doing promotional items. And so we're going to take everyone through kind of a little bit of a journey, get real clarity on what promotional items are, and then talk about some real strategies on doing things that will work and that will be effective. So let's start with the basics, which is, what is a promotional item? Peter, what is a promotional item?
Good question, Michael. And many times people don't take it seriously. And there's like 4 elements that make something a promotional item being effective, that should be thought about as you're preparing to use a promotional item in your branding and your marketing activities. And they're very simple. It's not that they're hard. It has to be a useful item for your target audience. Is it going to be in the home? Is it going to be in the office? How are they going to use that promotional item in their daily work so they'll see your message, what you want them to see? And you got to take some thought and consideration about it instead of just saying, well, I want a couple pens. The other thing is...
Well, the thing with that useful too as well is that will greatly vary depending on who your target audience is. So
range.
You might have, I mean, let's face it, back in the day in the 90s, right? The big thing was a mouse pad. Everyone was doing mouse pads. But back then, if you didn't have a computer or you were targeting an age group that didn't have a computer, it wasn't a very useful item. Whereas if you were targeting people who were programming, it was a very useful item. So that definition of useful item, and this is why it's such a beautiful kind of targeted type of, it'll really vary depending on who you're trying to reach.
It also is, where do they do their work? Are they at a construction job? Are they in a schoolroom? Are they working from home? So all those things can make an impact as to what the type of the promotional item might be.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is the useful item. So, for instance, even someone working in construction, the useful item, they may actually have a use for a mouse pad, but they have a use for it at home, and at home, nobody else gets to see it. Whereas if you had a useful item for someone in construction, maybe it's a pouch to hold a tool or something along that line. And so you actually, I mean, you basically want to make sure that that item is going to be used and in the place that you hope that it's being used too.
Well, that is very true. The only thing that I would add to that is that promotional items are very targeted. They're not a broad advertising message like social media or a billboard. So you are really targeting specific people. Either it could be a type of worker, or it could be all the CEOs you work with. So that's who you want to see your message. So it's a good point, Mike, but there's a lot of variables that you have to stop and think. Well, who do I want to see it? How often do I want them to see it? So the next thing is a promotional item will bring a message, and many times people don't take advantage of that. So if you're giving a promotional item, tell them what you want them to do. Put on the item, 24-hour service or something new or something that they expect. Or if you're team building, what is the team message that you want the employees to remember? So you can also put your website and that sort of thing on there. Of course, now with Google, you always need a website, because if people can Google your name or whatever, because sometimes you have a limitation of space. That's another reason to think about a promotional item is how much space do I need? On a pen, you want to get up a quarter of an inch high on some instruments. So you got to think about that.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point, because it's kind of one of the what I call alligator wrestling that goes with designers and marketing agencies like mine and promotional items. Because back in the day, right, it was like, okay, make sure if they have your pen at a trade show that when they get back, they're able to get your phone number, they're able to get your address, they're able to get and then website addresses were new. And so pretty much, I mean, most of the promotional items were this just gazooky, blob of ink and really tiny fonts and stuff. And a lot of times I'd have to wrestle with my clients, because it would be, if this thing looks ugly and it's got just a ton of words and letters on it, it won't be used and it won't be cherished. Whereas if you do something that's really tight and clean with the logo, it looks sharp. And then, it's like, for instance, if you can imagine, if you had a shirt, which was the Nike shirt, and on the Nike shirt, it had the phone number of Nike International, the address of, who would wear that? But I would also have this kind of, again, alligator wrestling with the clients, like, well, how are they going to find us? And you're right. Google solved a lot of that problem, because it used to be business directories and other things where it was a lot harder to kind of hunt people down. So it was good news for those of us who wanted to see the logo presented very clean, very tight. But it's also, there's a statement of confidence too, which comes to what you're doing with your promotional items. If your logo is enough, it's like the Nike swoosh. They've spent so much in advertising, they don't even need the word Nike, right? The swoosh itself. And there's something to be said about confidence if you have a really clean, well-designed item. All right. What other elements would help you define what is a promotional item?
Well, just to tag on what you're saying, Mike, it already depends the type of item and what the use is. If it's a gift, obviously you're not going to have all that gobbledygook on it. But if it's something else that you're really trying to hone down your brand and why you are differentiated from everybody else, then you want to stop and think, well, how am I going to do that? The next thing that's very important, I think, and I take advantage of as often as I can, is personalization. If you're targeting a CEO or you're targeting a customer and you know their name, put their name on it. And that way they can't give it away. Quick examples is I give out in the past calendars that would have those customers' name. I would put Mike Reynolds on it, and he can't give it away to somebody else. And this last year I did cutting boards for the kitchen for all my people, and I put my logo, but I also put their name. Here's Lisa Schutte or whoever the person was on that board too. And believe it or not, Mike, I've gotten pictures now. People have showing me where that cutting board is. And when I run into them, they'll say, last night, Peter, I was cutting up my onion or something. So it's been very interactive and it found out to be very useful. But what made it unique was the personalization, the person's name.
Well, and that's the thing is that with the advent of social media, this idea of product placement, people pay millions and millions of dollars to have their product in a movie or in a TV show. And, to see someone who has a lot of followers wearing your logo, or wearing one of your items, can get you a lot of impressions, if you choose the right thing. And you're right. Those who know Peter for many, many years would give a gift of a beautiful calendar. It's gold and world calendar. It just looks stunning. And everybody, get to be about October or November, December, like, Peter, when's my calendar showing up? And it just became a part and piece. And I think when you really do promotional items well, and you've really done a good job of really targeting your clients and your customers, that they actually are looking forward to getting those. And I have to tell you, I loved the cutting board. To me, it was great. And for me, it's even more kind of usable that I have with the cutting board. It was, one of the things with your items too, as well, is their quality, and when you get to useful, it doesn't mean that it's disposable. I mean, the hope is that it has a long shelf life, right?
Yes, very much so. And the last thing is that many people have to realize that you're giving out a promotional item with no strings attached. You don't expect the customer or the person to do anything. You're giving the promotional item out. Now, many times people confuse that with some other things, but you're not giving it out to the whole world. You're giving it out to the people who will make an impact with your business. So sometimes I say to people, you're not walking down the street and handing out a pen to everybody you see. No, you're only handing it out to the people who will impact your business, which is very important.
Yeah, so that's another key thing is the different, you would say, hey, what's your target audience? Who are you serving? But there's also different levels of that. For instance, maybe you're at a trade show, you're targeting people that barely know your organization, right? So you have items that are the first time someone's going to see your logo or your company. The shift to that are those that are clients. And me personally, that's what I loved using promotional items the most for, is because through years when I have clients, they're worth a lot to me. And to be able to thank them through the promotional item, and then also for them to be branded, like 20 years ago, you did these mugs for us. And the process, I don't know if the process, by the way, I'm one of Peter's worst clients, because when I work with him, I'm always back and forth 50 times. I'm very particular. But we spotted that mug in Starbucks, and I just thought it looked clean and classy. It was a nice presentation of the logo. And I said, Peter, hunt that down. But that particular mug used it so much. And then also this hat, and was doing a lot of golfing with clients at the time. And so would give that as a gift for them. Well, what happened is over time, I quantity buy these different products. Well, I ended up liking it so much for myself, I stopped giving them out, because I thought, hey, I love these and I don't want to run out. So I've been using these myself and saving them. But part of it, I think that's actually, I know, working directly with entrepreneurs, is when they start their business, it brings them great joy to be able to have, cocktail napkin idea, and then they come up with the name of a company, and then they come up with a logo. There's something very real about having that embroidered shirt, embroidered hat. And it's also with the clients too, as well, is that I love the coffee mug because my clients would set it on their office table, and I knew the nicer it would be and the less cluttered, no address, no call now, no 20%, the more it looked like a nice, clean item, the more that it can be used. Now, Peter, there is kind of a slight difference between promotional items and premium items. Can you explain the difference between those two?
Yeah, I can. And again, Mike mentioned a lot of things that I'd like to react to, but let's because there's so many different ways to use promotional items and when and how. So you really need to talk to a promotional person to say, okay, this is what I'm planning to do. Give me some ideas. But the difference with premiums is one significant difference. Yes, there has to be a useful item still. You still want to put a message on it. It may be more like the mug that Mike just showed you. Um, it You still can personalize them sometimes, depending on if you have that ability. But the biggest difference is that with a premium item is you give it to someone with an expectation they're going to do something. For example, how many of us have gotten in the mail from AAA insurance or AARP or someone like that who says, if you send in this card to ask about our insurance program, we're going to send you a really nifty bag, really nifty thing. So that's an exchange. I will do, you do that, I will send you something back. And many times, believe it or not, that's a great incentive for people, and people will respond more to those kinds of things than if you just mail them out and say, hey, send this card in. They'd like the idea of the exchange.
Yeah, so basically, essentially, your premium items are your quid pro quo, and your promotional items are, hey, here is a gift. And, I like to think of promotional items as kind of the Trojan horse, and that, the old story about they couldn't defeat their enemy. And so at one point they came with an idea of building this beautiful wooden Trojan horse, which they gave it as a quote gift to their to those that they're saying, hey, basically you beat us, congratulations. But inside the Trojan horse was a bunch of warriors that came out and then conquered the area. But in many ways, promotional items can get to places that no other advertising can, on the desk of that executive, in the meeting. I mean, trade shows, plastic bags are pretty much worthless unless you're at a trade show and suddenly you've got items in your hand and all of a sudden they're hugely valuable. And now your logo is walking around a trade show. And so picking those times, whereas premiums though, there's kind of that exchange. I was just watching the documentary again for about the whole scam that had with the Fire Island, and the gentleman who had started that, one of his prior businesses was basically a very high-end premium business where you got, instead of a regular credit card, they'd upgrade it to a very high-end metallic card that looked really cool, and you supposedly got special advantages with that. That turned out to be a ripoff as well. But the premium is just a great way to get people to upsell, to go to the next level. And I think you've done a nice job of kind of explaining the difference between the two.
But there's also other options you can do. You can expand that. For example, you want people to come to your booth at a trade show. Well, you send them out a little package that has just the ink cartridge inside for a pen. I mean, a really nice pen. They have to come to your booth to get the pen. Or another way is to be thinking about this. You really want to see this CEO or this decision maker, whoever it may be. So you get one of these remote controlled cars or helicopters or something, and you send that to them. But you don't send them the controller. If you'll give me 10 minutes of your time, I will come and bring you the controller. So there are different ways to do that. There's kind of fun ways to do it. People chuckle about it, but you just have to sit down and plan it. That's all.
So the promotional items is you're giving something with no strings attached. The premium is there's a string attached, and the more that you can make it fun and playful. I mean, in a lot of ways, if at trade shows, this is kind of that concept of putting on, hey, up in our suite, we're going to be putting on a party. There'll be, cocktails and appetizers. And oh, by the way, we're going to show you our new product line that, while you're eating your snacks and getting your drinks. And then often there's promotional items that are also given as part of that. Whereas the premium is, I think it's very clever to have things. And remember, you mentioned early on about the messaging, And so this is so important. And this is why I spend so much time on the items and really making sure that they're getting the message across, because it's not just important that you get placed in the right place on the executive's desk or on the construction site or whatever the case may be, but also that when people actually see you, your message is getting across. So if you're coming, if your message is we're smarter than the competition, then you're thinking of some kind of chess piece or something that actually communicates that extra level of intelligence. And that's what's so great about promotional items, is there's so many different ways to make them work for you. Now, we're in the numbers business, Peter, and we like proof. What do the statistics say when it comes to using promotional items premium?
Well, there's so many different ones, and I don't want to bore people with all of them, but it's things like 80% of the people have a very positive reaction when they get one. The right product makes a difference. They're saying 75%. So they're concerned about what are they getting. 74% say your brand is more memorable when they've gotten it. 99% keep them. Many people say, no, they don't keep them. Yes, they do. And the other thing is that most of them will give them to somebody else. So somebody else is seeing your brand. So they're not going into the trash can when you're going. And one of the ones that I really like is that 99% of the people will go out of their way to get a promotional item. So they're right there in front of people. Now, I wanted to add something to what Mike had said earlier, is that promotional items are really effective when they worked with other mediums. So that if you're doing a good job of communicating your message and the promotional item is attached to that, the promotional item will hang around for 6 to 7 months. And when they see the logo, they'll, oh, yes, this is where I got it. This is what Mike said. This is why they're doing it, because they're seeing the logo. And as your marketing goes forward, you're reinforcing your message so that every time they see your logo, your brand, whatever it is that they gave you, they'll connect the two things. This is why I like that brand. This is why I like associating with this brand.
Yeah, here's an excellent use of actually promotional items. Is just recently took a large group of friends and actually fellow soccer football enthusiasts, and we went on a European trip, and there was 35 of us, and it was 10 days. We extended it to a couple of weeks, but it was such an amazing, memorable trip that we're really grateful, because the travel agency that helped us put on the whole trip and plan things out and arrange for the buses, they provided each of us, when we got our tickets and stuff, they gave us a scarf, which is basically, you see the football games, and it has our logo of our group that we have. And so all of the pictures that we took, riding on the bus, going to the games, our people have these scarves draped over, with our logo, and it'll be something that we'll remember the trip, because we will not discard that, 6 months from now, a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and our title here is making your business unforgettable with promotional items. We should say unforgettable in a good way. But it's really an excellent way to reinforce the qualities of experiences that people have, because this is, why I think it's very effective at trade shows. The number one issue that people really have with sales is not that they're not interested in your product or service, but that they forgot. Because they're so busy, they're so distracted. Life is, so many challenging. So they this mountaintop experience. I saw these great products and services going to transform our business. And then you come home and, kids are running around and this happened, and then you forgot, So having these items that you bring back with that can really reinforce those points, I think are huge. Well, let's get into the meat of this. Let's talk about some actual applications and some strategies for if you're going to use promotional items, embroidered shirts, hats,
Let me
tattoos.
let me just kind of tag on when you talked about trade shows, because I think that many times people don't take advantage of trade shows. And really quickly is, what do you do before the trade show? All right. How is your booth going to look? And promotional products people can help with that. But also, what is your goal? What's your message? Then during the trade show, are you reinforcing that message? And then at the end of the trade show, after the trade show, how are you following up with the people? And many times when people work with trade shows, and this is one part that gets to me, is let's say you have a trade show and there's going to be 2,000 people attending that trade show. Well, not all 2,000 people are going to be interested in your product, so you don't need 2,000 items. Not everybody's going to stop by your booth. Not everybody is going to have a need for what you're doing. So you want to make sure that when people stop by your booth, you do impress them with what they have. And one of the things that I suggest to people all the time is to have A and B gifts kind of things. A, things maybe in the top that people can take and use, like Mike was saying about remembering stuff. It could be Post-it notes. It could be a pen. It could be a whole bunch of different things that we can discuss and have. But then you have something that's underneath the table where this person was really interested, and I want to follow up with this person. And if that person gives me his contact information right there, he has a nicer gift. And then when I follow up with them later, they're now connecting the dots between that nicer gift and what I'm calling and reminding them of why they really liked the product or service we were selling. It's starting to connect the dots. The other thing is, another idea is many times people get phone calls or they stop by and they see a company. And that company is, at that point in time, is shopping. And you've spent time explaining everything. Well, how have you followed up? How have you made yourself different? How have you raised yourself above the noise? And by sending them a promotional item or leaving one behind, that makes an impact because they're now knowing that you care, that you want to be them. You want to develop a relationship with them. And so that's another tool on that. There's always the gifts at the end of the year and the season such as that. And I always say to people, if you're not giving your clients some type of reminder of who you are, your competitors are. And so therefore, you want to make sure that you're saying something nice and appreciative to them. What about team building? What about people in your own team, your own office? How do they feel about you? Are you building team activity for them? Showing them that you care about them or they're part of the team or team spirit. You have a slogan. How many times you've had those team meetings where people go, we got to get our act together? What have you done to do that? Just some ideas just to throw out. Didn't even mention safety programs. Didn't mention the myriad of things that are out there that businesses can use to promote their message with whoever their target audience is. Mike?
Yeah, so this idea of having A and B and sometimes even C type of promotional items, because you have a budget and you're always thinking through what is. I remember very early on, years and years ago, someone in promotional items, her slogan was "No trashy trinkets," and basically her theory was you get so much garbage stuff. I mean, for me, there's nothing worse than if you go to a trade show or you go to an event and somebody gives you a pen and literally when you get home, that pen explodes in your hand. What have you done? You have left a message that you don't care about quality. And then, if you're a high quality company, that really needs to be aligned. But that being said, you have a budget, you have a total trade show budget, you have a gift budget, and so you want to maximize it. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to be wasteful. And so I remember working with a company in the aviation industry, and we would do a big air show. Now at the air show, 90% of the population would have no interest in our very high level products that we were engineering. In fact, probably out of the whole population, there was maybe 2 to 3% that were either pilots or that were in the engineering field that would really what we would be called prospects. And so our A giveaway was just a pen. Now I used the word, let's just say less expensive pen, but it was a nice pen. And people would just come by, where's your pens? And you'd pass those out. And some of those would get into the right hands. But we'd also have items that if it was an engineer from a large, aviation industry, and they came and had a conversation, we'd say, hey, hang on a second. We reach underneath and they'd get the much higher level item. But, being very strategic with it, because you definitely don't want to squander these. You want to have the most meaningful, powerful gift possible. And so, I mean, these, when you talk about applications, one of the really great applications is in the area of prospecting. And so we talked about rewarding your best clients, but we've seen applications of this where people aren't just sending a pen to someone, but maybe they have a software and they're trying to reach a very high level executive. And the whole message is this software is going to save your business so much time. Why not send them, $100, $150, really nice, desk clock that's beautiful and then it's designed, and here's the time saving. That's so nice, they're not going to throw it away. It's going to go somewhere, and that all through the day they're going to hear the tick, tick, tick and be reminded, well, maybe we should call them. What are some unique applications that you've seen through the years?
Well, one of the things that I want to kind of mention here while I have the time is you need to give the promotion person like me time to work with you to plan these things out. Because sometimes when you're talking about, like, you're an aerospace company, we want to do something that's very unique. We want to customize it. We want to make sure that nobody else can have this. I mean, this is the only one there is. Well, we need to have production times. And sometimes those production times can take 60, 90 days to get the sample in, see it, modify it, all that kind of stuff. So I saw a tote bag for a company that did music and videos of beautiful places all around the world. And so what they did was they took some of their most beautiful pictures and put it on the tote bag, which they designed specifically for these trade shows. And it took us 65, 70 days to get it all together and get them here and get them delivered. But they got people asking for those tote bags because they were so beautiful and they were something that they would like to use and use at their homes. I'm also seeing what I really think is really kind of cool, and they're not that expensive either, is, have you ever seen a greeting card that when you open it up, it popped open in front of you?
Yeah.
Well, I've seen construction companies take their bulldozer and they've cut them out, and their bulldozer opens up and pops right up out of this card saying, do you want a new bulldozer, or do you want to work with our? So there are just so many things out there that are available to make your presentation stand out, be a little bit more unique. But we need time to think it all the way through with you so that we do get the impact that we want. And we are targeting people. We're not just targeting the world. We want to influence a group of people only.
Yeah. So as you're thinking of promotional items, ideas for your business, for what you're selling and what you're doing, I think probably a question that pops up, well, why don't I just go to the internet real quick and look up something and order it? I've worked with essentially Peter almost exclusively for 20 plus years now. And the reason is when you work with a real professional, he's invested the time to actually go to these very large shows, hold on to the items. You really don't know the difference between the quality a lot of times just by seeing a picture on the internet, but holding them, testing them out, making sure that they work well, plus that they're reliable supply chains. People that say, yeah, it'll be there in 3 weeks, and then it shows up in 8 weeks. And by the way, you missed your trade show. And so having someone who's a professional work for you, typically they get you a sample, they can talk you off the ledge if you've got an idea that, I don't know if that's going to be that unique. And so it's always been great working with Peter. And Peter's, one of his superpowers is he just doesn't make mistakes. And I'm sure in his head, he's thinking of a few things that went wrong. But all the details, because there's a lot of details that can go wrong. I mean, you can get a shipment of 2,000 of this item, and the logo's backwards or something, or the colors are off. And so having someone to work with is really valuable, especially someone those of us who know Peter. It's hard to find someone as passionate about promotional items as he is. Any last thoughts, Peter, on why it really makes sense to work with a professional?
Well, I think one of the things is that what Mike just kind of commented on. I use this example. Some people will say to me they want a red mug. Okay, let's find out, why do you want the red mug? And then I can come back and say, I have found some other styles of red mugs that you haven't seen before, just because I know how to search and I know where they are. Or maybe it's, why do you want a mug? That's going to be awfully heavy. How about if we do this instead? It might be more targeted to your audience, but it also could be more economical and more feasible for transportation or whatever it may be. And then on that same vein, sometimes there are common items out there. All right, there's like a C-handled mug, but you've ordered it. See, I live in the West Coast, but you've ordered it from Florida. Well, now you're paying Florida shipping rates, unless that company for some reason is going to subsidize that shipping for some manner. And you don't know that when you're doing off the internet. So those are small little things, but they can make a difference in the cost of an event, which again, I'm very conscious of. We want to stay within someone's budget to make sure it works for them.
All right, Peter. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us in the Marketing Cafe.
Thank you.
This has been making your business, making your business unforgettable with promotional items. Now, if you miss any part of this, good news is that these are all available in replay in the Marketing Cafe Academy, including this one. And so you can go there and see this and the many others that we've done. And you do that by going to marketingcafe.club. And there we've got free membership to the Marketing Cafe Academy. And then you'll have access to all of these 24 hours, 7 days a week. We've got a lot of great topics. If you're interested in connecting with me, globalstudio.com is my web address. You can be connected to just about everything that we do there. And we'd love to get to meet you and chat with you as well. So this ends our session here of the Marketing Cafe Live. So glad that you joined us, and we'll see you next time in the Marketing Cafe. Thank you.